link of the chain.
So Payas, did she send that link?
Sorry?
Did Chilimo send that link?
Not yet.
Yeah.
No, I don't see it yet. No, not yet.
I have sent it on your WhatsApp, BJ.
WhatsApp.
For
So thanks.
BJ.
Thanks a lot.
What about? Did you send it on my WhatsApp?
On your Skype.
Okay, sure. Yes, on Skype, I see it. Yeah.
Thanks,
sure.
Chilimo. Thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
For those who have joined us, welcome. We will be beginning shortly. So the time is here. Welcome so much. We are very excited to have all of you as a part of this webinar. I also want to give a special thank you and welcome to our speakers, Vijay Kumar, the Executive Director of GNDR, who's joining us from London. Welcome and thank you for taking your time to join us. And Payas Kuber, who's joining us from Pretoria. He works with the UN as a senior policy advisor in DRI Resilience. Thank you for taking your time to join us.
Thank you.
Yes, and for all of you who have joined us from near and far, different time zones, many countries represented here, many cities, all meeting on this digital platform. We want to say thank you for joining us and you're welcome. We are excited to have you as part of this conversation. And we hope, our ultimate hope is that this conversation will enrich the work that you're doing currently. To begin with, I want to introduce the network that has organized this, and this is the Kenya for Resilience Community of Practice. And this is a network of civil society organizations that has been currently supported by the Swedish Mission Council operating here in Kenya. The community was born in 2018 after a resilience workshop, and many of the partners present during this workshop felt the need of collaboration, partnership, sharing knowledge and experiences to enrich our work in resilience. And hence the community of practice was born. From our end, Kenya for Resilience, we have organized both online and offline workshops like this webinar to really enhance the capacity of our members, not only to integrate resilience concepts in our work and our programming, but to also adapt and adopt resilience way of thinking in our organizations and also to involve all of us in achieving the Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction. In the previous webinars, up until this one, we have talked about resilience in general. We have had conversations of integrating resilience, what resilience is, what it is not, understanding resilience from both a humanitarian and development perspective. And last but not least, in our last webinar, we talked about measuring resilience. So this is a build-up, but also independent conversation or webinar that looks at how we can institutionalize resilience, how we can make resilience part and parcel of the work that we are doing. And from our conversation today, we steer it towards each and every one of us in our organization, building resilient communities where we are. So the objective of this webinar really is to together process what it means for an organization to have resilience as part and parcel of its work, or for the long name that is almost a tongue twister, Institutionalizing Resilience is our conversation for today. We will immediately now get to listen to our presenters now. And the first presenter that we have today towards the conversation, and I'll just move one slide forward, backwards so that we are together. For our first speaker who will talk to us about what it means for an organization to have resilience as part and parcel of its work, we have BJ Kumar. As I had initially mentioned, he's Executive Director of GNDR, and he also serves as a head of the GNDR Secretariat. He hence leads the implementation and continuous development of the GNDR strategy, and I am sure he will share a bit about that since it's just started its operationalization. He has a long track record in humanitarian and development work, and particularly in DRR. He has considerable expertise in leading and managing civil society organizations and networks, and has great hands-on experience working in Africa, Europe, South Asia, and Southeast Asia. He's a strong advocate of shifting power from the international systems to community-led capacity, preparedness, and response facilitated by the local organization. He's also a passionate promoter of human rights and people power, both in policy, advocacy, and implementation. So I want to welcome BJ to start off with with a presentation. And as he shares, kindly let us know who you are, which organization you work from, and where you're listening to us from. And this will just help us know who we are interacting with. So without any further ado, I want to invite BJ for the next 25 minutes, take us through what we need to do to make resilience part and parcel of our work. Karibu sana, BJ. BJ, we unfortunately cannot hear you.
I think he's on mute.
I said Asante Sana.
Okay,
thank you very
now we
much,
can hear you.
Selimo.
Yes.
It is
Thank you.
really a privilege to be part of this discussion, to share my thoughts and my perspectives with all of you. You have been doing a great job. Kenya for Resilience Group is a fantastic initiative to ensure that we talk of resilience in Kenya and share that experience globally to influence the thinking and action. Is a brilliant opportunity for me to be part of the discussion, which is really going to shape the way we think, the way we act, the way we pursue the resilience in our own respective responsibilities and respective roles. With this, I'll just quickly take you through the presentation that my colleagues and me, we have put it together to share some of our perspectives. Let me start by sharing who we are. Can you go to the next slide, please? We global network of civil society organization for disaster risk reduction is a global network of civil society organizations, and it is one of the largest international network of CSOs working to strengthen resilience and reduce risk in communities. We connect frontline civil society organizations with national and international policy making institutions and governments. We also influence policies and practices by amplifying the voices of the people most at risk. And we are fortunate to have organizations like Children's Mission in Africa as one critical member of our network, and also Selimo as one of our national focal point or focal person in Kenya. We are a network of now 1,384 organizations who are spread across 126 countries. Next, please. So now, what we are trying to achieve? We are trying to achieve a world in which everyone works together to strengthen the resilience of people most at risk and prevent hazards becoming disasters. The three things that we are talking of here, that we work together as civil society organization, strengthen the resilience of the people most at risk, and prevent hazards becoming a disaster. It's not necessary that we need to have disaster in this world at all. Resilience can actually prevent that. Now if we analyze it further, yes, please go ahead, next one, please. If we see this, that why these communities are at risk, in our understanding, they are denied the access to and control over the resources to be resilient. Now, if you think of a person who is poor, who is vulnerable, who is marginalized, live in a corner in Kenyan poverty-stricken areas, think of them. Now, why they're at risk? They're at risk not because there is a flood, not because there is a drought. They are at risk primarily because they're poor. They don't have the resources to really, they don't have the access, they don't have control over the resources to live a life with dignity and by becoming resilient. Now, this is what primarily drives home is human rights, which are fundamental in whatever we are talking of. Now, the rights are civil rights, political rights, economic rights, social and cultural rights. They are universal, they are inalienable, they are indivisible, they are individual as collective rights. And it is the primary responsibility of the state to respect, protect, promote, and fulfill these human rights of the citizens. So that way, the state is responsible to provide that basic resources, provide that access to and control over the basic resources, which has to be done by the people who are most at risk, so that they can build their resilience, so that they can actually live a life with dignity. So that is what the connections. Can we go to the next one, please? Now, what do we mean by resilience? So now the resilience, in our understanding, I have picked up the Stockholm Resilience Center definition. Resilience is a capacity of a system, be it an individual, a forest, a city, or an economy, to deal with change and continue to develop. It is about how human and nature can use shocks and disturbances like financial crisis or climate change or now pandemic to spur renewal and innovative thinking. This is how resilience is defined by the Stockholm Resilience Center. Can we go to the next one, please? But what is actually important from the perspective, from our perspective, that whose resilience that we are talking of? You can talk of resilience of a city. You can talk of resilience of an economy. You can talk of a resilience of a factory or a business concern. But here we are talking of resilience of the communities most at risk, and we are trying to develop those resilience by ensuring that they enjoy and assert the rights that they are entitled to, where the state has a role to play, and we work in all those areas where these people live. So that is fundamental, that we are trying to see resilience from the perspective of the communities most at risk. Next one, please. Now, so how do we institutionalize this? If resilience is something that we are looking at from the perspective of the communities who are most at risk, means the communities is analyzing it, analyzing and assessing the risk that they are exposed to, and then they are making a plan to plug in those risks. Now, how we institutionalize such a process? Now, that is where we would like to submit to all of you to think of these are the areas that we thought as can be used as ingredients. Selimo, next one, please. Now, what we are saying, if you are talking of resilience to be institutionalized, means there has to be a set of policies which will enable the communities to do the assessment, community to make the plans, and community to integrate those plans into the local government plans, like what is actually expected in Kenya. The community is actively involved in the local planning processes and integrating that into the planning of the local government and the provinces as well. So that is what is fundamental mechanism or the policy in Kenya. Now, for making that work, we need to have appropriate structures and appropriate mechanisms. So, like say, appropriate mechanism which can facilitate that process, where communities can come together, where they can actually express themselves, they can make a plan, and those plans can be integrated into a formal mechanism of the institution. And for doing that, appropriate capacities need to be existing at the appropriate level. So that is where the technical support and strengthening of the skills and knowledge at the local level is essential. When I'm talking of local level, I'm talking of the communities who are most at risk. And there has to be a culture, the creation of a common and collective sense of responsibility. So we believe that resilience cannot be achieved by one or two people. It cannot be achieved. Resilience can only be achieved if we work together. And that collective sense of responsibility to build the resilience is fundamental in our deliberation, in our discussion. Now, one can argue that when we are collectively doing it, then we can actually perhaps think of everybody. Yes, we should think of everybody. But let us actually remember this and remind ourselves, when we think of everybody and don't think of the poor and the most marginalized, most at risk communities, for whom disaster is not an event, it is a part and parcel of life. If we don't think of them, we might miss why they're actually in that context. So why do we think of everybody? The culture is to be instilled, to be inculcated, that actually captures the analysis which is done by the communities most at risk, so that we don't forget them. We don't actually leave them behind. So that is the foundation of what we are actually talking of. And obviously, there will be a need for resource, there will be a need for funding. And those fundings has to be allocated in the government budgets, in the national and the local budget. And where the national and local budget is not in a condition to absorb that, then perhaps there are international mechanisms. There are the Sustainable Development Goal 17, which actually talks of the collaboration between North and South, the rich and the poorer countries, the developing countries and the developed countries. So that is what needs to be promoted, so that we should try to see how the 84% of the resource or funding which is now currently located with G20 countries is also transferred to the government or the third world level, developing countries level, so that they can also participate in building a resilience collectively. Now, last but not the least, from our understanding, what is critical is ensuring that there is an accountability. That accountability is not only to the donors. Accountability is not only to ourselves, not only to each other. The accountability is also to those people who are most at risk. How can we actually operationalize the accountability to those people whose life is meant to be changed and transformed? So how we operationalize and integrate that. So this is what in our understanding can institutionalize the resilience. Can you just go to the next one, please? Now, let's say if I expand it further, I'll not get into the details here. These are the ingredients of institutionalize. What we developed, a community-based disaster risk management cookbook. So I will actually request Marlene, if she's there, if she can put it, the link to the document that we have. There are 2 documents that we have actually prepared, 2 cookbooks. We call them cookbooks. So these are primarily the various ingredients which are required to institutionalize and sustainable and make sustainable the community-based disaster risk management. I have picked up some of these institutionalization mechanism from that cookbook. So this is what we are talking of primarily, where we talk of policy environment, where we talk of structures and mechanisms, developing those, strengthening the capacities, ensuring the culture of collective responsibility, ensuring that funding is available, and ensuring that accountability is available. So I will actually suggest that actually I will leave it to you. I'm sure you will be getting a copy of this presentation, so you can see the details. I will not get into the details of these ingredients, which can be contextualized. If you take this, the 7 ingredients, you can actually use it in your context and contextualize and detail out how and what can be prioritized in your own context. So that is what actually is meant by this process of developing these ingredients and the cookbook. Can I go to the next one, please, Selima? Now, let's some examples. Let's say, for example, in Somalia. So let's say where the community-led structures, community-led processes were actually used. And let me just take. I can't see my presentation. It's blocked. Okay. So let's say where in Somalia, this particular organization, Bulaya Development Organization, they actually consulted the communities. Thanks to this exercise of the community-led committees, the services were actually planned and were actually included for making resilience plan at the local level. And now these committees are also responsible for resolving the disputes between the different groups on the water. Next one, please. Now there's another example from Ethiopia, where this local CSO, Jegdo and CODET conducted community-based action planning to leverage the flooding to improve irrigation for agriculture. The process was created. Process also created joint community, local government field monitoring groups. This led to establishing a strong collaboration between the two, with local resilience being included in the local government plans. Next, please. In Burkina Faso, this is another example where the women groups were actually involved in income generation program to see that how the economic resilience is built. All income went to improving the economic situation of local women. This was acknowledged by the municipality, who is now backing the project and pushing for its continuous implementation. So that actually was integrated into the government plan, which started as the community-based initiatives. Next, please. Now this is how you can see various examples. The link, if Marlene has already given those links of Coherence cookbook and CBDRM cookbook, I can see that she has already given CBDRM cookbook link. So you can actually go to this and actually see some of these examples. Let me actually share some of the examples from Kenya as well. When I was in Kenya, we actually worked in almost like say 17 counties in my previous organization. There we actually ensured the community-based plans were integrated into the local government plans. So that was actually a critical way to build the resilience of the communities, where community assessed and analyzed the various the reasons for the marginalization, which are primarily the risk. So these risks were analyzed, and that was actually integrated into the plans. And if you are more interested to know about how that operated, how that operationalized, I'm sure my ex-colleagues in Action Aid in Kenya will be very happy to share with you. So I'll be linking anybody interested. If they can write to me, I can link them to the work of Kenya, and they did really a good work in terms of ensuring the community-based plans were prepared. And also there was a social audit, community-based monitoring, and the citizens monitoring of the budgets of the plans and budget of the counties, which happened in Kilipi. And there are other experiences which can be actually linked to you. If you are interested, just let me know. I'll just actually perhaps will be happy to link you with those resources and those people who have actually done at the ground level. Now, can you go to the next one, please? Now, how do we institutionalize resilience? Now, it is all about the power. If end of the day, I don't have, if I'm a woman, if I'm living in one of the villages in Kenya, and I'm experiencing multiple denial of rights and exposed to multiple risks and hazards, and the same time I'm also exposed to patriarchy and experiencing domestic violence in my day-to-day life, it is happening primarily because there is a play of a power which means which can be visible, which can be invisible. Visible power where the government has given that power to somebody to do things, or invisible power which is also there by a village headman, a traditional headman, or by priest. These are all invisible power. Not necessarily they have the power, but they will influence you, and they influence your ability to do things and your behavior as well as your actions. But power, in my understanding, is not finite. Power is all about power within, power to, power with, and power over. So power within is all about what my knowledge is, what I know, how much I know, how much I analyze things, how much I have learned in my life, and how much confidence I have to articulate what I actually know. So that is where the power two comes, where I built my confidence by I built my confidence, and actually I also see that how we can actually ensure that my confidence is using the knowledge and expertise that I have to deliver things. And I also work with others so that we can come together, analyze together, and assert our rights together, go and explore, getting a solution together, stay in a solidarity and collectively. That is what is going to be there. Yes, I noted that 6 minutes is left. Thank you, Salima, for letting me know. Thanks a lot. Now, can you go to the next one, please? Now, how we develop the power within: address immediate needs, capacity strengthening, adopt a participatory approach. These are the ways that you can actually develop the power within, which is critical for as a building block for the resilience. Can you go to the next one, please? And power two is the creating the opportunity where you use those knowledge and expertise to develop it. That you can do through power analysis, you can do analyzing, prioritizing risk and possible solution, mobilizing collective actions and resources, community plans of addressing the risk, and there are various ways that you can do it. Next one, please. And CSOs mobilize and strengthen communities. That is the power with, that you build the power with by mobilizing the communities together. CSOs collectively federate and promote the alliance among themselves to push the policy agenda and start bringing the voices of the communities most at risk to the various levels. Next one, please. So that is how you challenge the power over. The power which is unjust, power which is unequal, which is perpetuated by few, then you challenge those. Challenge those policies which are against the interest of the communities, challenge those actions which are against the interest of the communities, and that's the only way that you can actually develop it. Next one, please. Now, in my understanding, this is best done through what we say is through a process of localization. Yes, can you next one, please? On the localization, let me take you back to our strategy that we have launched recently, where you talked of the mobilizing the civil society into groups, championing localization, and strive for risk-informed development. That's what is our global strategy, which was launched last month. You can actually see the global strategy in our website. But let me just get into slightly more details into the localization part as well. Can we go to the next one, please? And localization is, next one, please. So the localization means, yes, next one, please, Selima. So localization means a shift of power dynamics and access to resources. Localization enables local communities most at risk to participate, influence, and take decisions on risk-informed development policies and practices. Next one, please. And what are the building blocks? The building blocks of localization, as I was talking of, that the localization presupposes that the people who are taking decisions, localization is actually you are bringing the decisions which is currently taken at the level of New York or London or Nairobi, you are actually taking it from that perspective down to take the decisions which is taken by the communities most at risk, facilitated by the civil society organizations and working together. Now, for that, it is necessary that the communities most at risk has the capacity, and that capacity has to be strengthened, and has governance and accountable management systems which is set up at the civil society level, which can actually deliver it, and have an enabling policy environment that I talked about, the foundation of the resilience, and have appropriate linkages, like say linkages from among at the local level, at the national level, and also at the international level, and transferring the finance sources from local level. Now, here, what we are actually talking about, localization doesn't mean that we are creating the small islands or isolated villages or isolated urban centers as isolated ones. We live in the world, which is a global village. So the localization means which links the local to national to global, where the global actors has a role to play. Local organizations have a role to play. But what actually matters that who decides that what is to be used for changing the lives of the people or transforming the lives of the people. And that, in my understanding, is the local organization which facilitate and brings the voice of the communities most at risk. Is the local entity takes the decision, but is informed by what the global actors are actually generating through shared exchange of experience and knowledge. Next, please. Now, so these outcomes are, if we are that governments and INGOs believe the local civil society organization can do this, local CSOs have capacities, there's an enabling environment for local CSOs, and global and national actors are also accountable for localization. Next one, please. So, like say, the COVID-19 is a typical example.
I think we have lost BJ. I'm hoping he will. Yeah, I'm hoping he will be back online.
Anyway, his time was up.
Yes.
His time was already up.
Yes. We'll give him a few minutes, and when he gets back, he will finish his trail thought. Or what he was saying. But we can we will continue with the presentations for now, and we will have a few minutes at the end of the next presentation where BJ can just give his final remarks. So allow me to introduce the next speaker, who is also with us. And our next speaker for our time today is Dr. Payas Kuber, who is joining us from Pretoria at this time. He has a PhD in disaster risk management and resilience, and he's a senior policy advisor. I can see BJ is here. So BJ, we just mentioned that we'll have a few minutes at the end of this next presentation for you to just give a summary of your thoughts, if that's okay.
Yes, perfect. I'm so sorry. Saw that my internet connection went off. Apologies.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Technology.
Till what time I spoke that you heard. But hope I'll come back later. Thanks a lot.
Okay. That's
Thanks,
the challenge
BJ.
now we have to to deal with this technology era. Okay, so as I mentioned, he has a PhD in disaster risk management and resilience, and is a senior policy advisor at United Nations, specializing in disaster management policy and resilience strategy, early warning systems, and climate change adaptation. The last 15 years and counting, he has been working in the field of disaster risk reduction, preparedness and response, and resilience in academia, international non-governmental organizations, and the UN system in Africa, Asia, Middle East, and Europe. Dr. Kuber has led and worked with national governments in Zimbabwe, Afghanistan, Lesotho, Swaziland, South Sudan, and South Africa in developing disaster management policies and strategies, and integrated development plans, and also setting up early warning systems. He also participated in global forums that ended up developing the Sendai framework for disaster management in Japan. So it is great. It's a great honor to have Dr. Kube. I'm definitely not pronouncing his name correctly just because it is Zulu, and I don't have the click from my mother tongue. But I want to invite you to share with us. BJ has set the foundation and said, what is it to institutionalize resilience, and how do we do it? I know he will talk further more about localization as a way to institutionalize it, but we want to hear from you. What is the technical steps to take towards institutionalizing resilience? And then thereafter we'll have BJ finish his thought trail. So as he speaks, feel free to write the questions. Julia, part of the Kenya for Resilience Secretariat, is in the chat box, just encouraging us to write questions. If you have any questions to the two very able gentlemen, please write them. But for now, welcome, Dr. Payas Kuber.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Chalimo. Thank you for your kind introduction. And thanks to BJ, because BJ, I think he has made my work very easy. And I appreciate that. And of course, I also appreciate the opportunity to be able to speak to a number of people that have joined this conversation on resilience. And I must say that I'm also privileged to be part of this forum today. I think it is one of the best forums that we have, especially in this context of COVID-19. I must say that this ordinarily would take us about 3 days with the practical work that we should do in a face-to-face workshop or training kind of thing. But I think it's good that we start this conversation. Please, can you go and show the presentation outline? Next, please. Yes, I'll definitely go through the rationale for resilience strategy, which PJ has touched on a a bit. And that has made my work very easier. And I also show how resilience is a policy and systemic issue, and also the key steps that as an organization you can take in formulating a resilience strategy, as well as how you institutionalize that in practical terms within your organization. Next, please. Yes, I think in terms of Rationale, we meet at a very interesting times in COVID-19 today. And we know that the complexity and severity of emergencies is increasing, and the threats are very much with us every day. And we know that the modern society is plagued by issues that must be deliberately taken into account during disaster preparedness, response, and recovery. And I must say, when I'm talking about the issues that must be taken into account, normally when we do disaster preparedness and response or recovery planning, we think of the physical impacts of disasters more than also looking at other forms of vulnerabilities. We know that the vulnerabilities can be either physically, economic, social, and emotional. So in terms of preparedness and recovery planning and response, we must already include this as part of our planning processes in resilience. So we also aim to create stronger, safer, and more connected communities. I think my colleague BJ talked a lot about the issue of capacity, community governance, community policy, and the linkages of communities, as well as how resources are shared. So as you craft your strategy, you are actually enhancing how the community is connected and how the community is governed and how the community share the resources that they have. And also, of course, it's a mitigation strategy for the rising costs in terms of disaster response. So when we are talking about crafting really resilience strategy, we're talking about investing in those disasters that have not yet occurred, but trying to make sure that we reduce costs in terms of response and recovery. Next, please. Okay, the other reason why we need to talk about resilience and why you should actually take it upon yourself as an institution, organization, or whatever entity to make sure that it is part and parcel of your work is because of already the global agenda. Resilience already, all of you know about the Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction, 2015-2030, and building resilient nations and communities is at the top of that agenda. And also the sustainable development goals that you all know about, that also take into account how communities should sustainably be managed or should actually be in a position to lead a quality kind of life and without poverty and so on. And if you look at those SDGs and what the Sendai framework, you can see that these are two sides of the same coin. And also I can go to the Africa agenda. In the African Union, we've got the Africa Strategy for Disaster Risk Reduction. And these are some of your reference documents that you need to look at as you craft your strategy. And also, apart from the Africa Strategy for Disaster Risk Reduction, we've got the African Union strategy for the implementation of the Sendai framework, or the implementation plan, which was crafted in 2016. And also, we've got a common Africa position in the humanitarian effectiveness, a very key document that basically you need to take a look at with its 4 pillars. And one of the pillars is on addressing the root causes of disasters, more so looking at the durable solutions that come with that. And at the local level or at the national level, if we are talking about Kenya, for example, Kenya is one typical example with a very good disaster management policies and regulations. And these are some of the documents that definitely give us a reason or impetus to say that resilience should be at the center of community intervention or community development planning, or the integrated planning that we do for development at national level or at community level. But also interesting in Kenya, for example, or any other country, for anyone joining who is participating from any other country, in Kenya we've got what is called Kenya Vision 2030. And the Kenya Vision 2030 basically brings out very interesting dimensions of the economy, the pillars on economy, macroeconomic issues, the pillar on social issues, and the pillar on the political structure. And these influence a lot. I think when BJ was talking about power dynamics, power within, power for whom, these are also some of the issues that are addressed in that Kenya Vision 2030. And at the local level, we know that communities are already organized in a certain way through community structures. BJ talked about community committees. Let's have at community level, at county level, at district level, resilience champions, committees that are organized in a certain way, because a community is an agency on its own. They have a certain way how they are organized, and therefore we should strengthen and build that capacity for resilience. Next, please. Okay, just to reiterate what BJ also has said, resilience, all of you, it's from the Latin word resilio, which says bounce back or bounce forward. In a way, we say that even if people are affected by some disaster or by a hazard in any way, they should be able to quickly bounce back to their state of affairs, or they should also be better than they were before they are affected by that particular disaster. And this therefore also gives us the idea that disasters do not only bring negative outcomes, but at times it can be an opportunity to even look at a more vibrant and more sustainable development. So in terms of a resilience strategy, therefore, we say that a resilience strategy is an opportunity or a platform, therefore, for effective disaster preparedness, response, and recovery. It is a vehicle. So at institutional level, at any entity, at any organization, look at the resilience strategy as an opportunity or a mechanism or a vehicle that will therefore make us include things that we don't necessarily include in our programming, looking at the physical nature, the physical aspect of a particular hazard, how it will affect people, and also how it will affect the economy, how it will affect also the social infrastructure, and how it also affects people emotionally. So people, as they are affected by disasters, we have to look at how they are able to cope positively. And I underlined the word positively there, because at times, out of desperation, people end up adopting a very negative, adaptive, or coping strategies. So as we look at resilience and the planning and working with the communities sustainably, we have to look at what choices do they have so that they are able to adapt or cope positively with what affects them. Next slide, please. Right, so we said already, and BJ did say this from the start, that resilience, look at it as a policy and systemic issue. It is therefore, when we look at resilience, therefore, we are looking at a paradigm shift in terms of disaster causation, from the environmental determinism to social construction. That is why we don't want to hear people talk about natural disasters. I think BJ said that disasters don't need really to be there to happen. Yes, hazards can happen. That's why we allow people to talk about natural hazards, but we cannot talk about natural disasters. If a flood happens, or if a drought happens in an area, in a county or whatever, but the level of destruction of that by that particular hazard, it is based on the level of social construction, how the social factors that are there. Because we talk about exposure versus vulnerability. Every community is exposed, okay? Is affected by this flood, is affected by this hazard, is affected by this drought. But how much of that particular entity of a community is vulnerable? So vulnerability is not equally spread. There are some entities or people or communities or entities of the environment that are more vulnerable than the other. So that is why we need to look more on the social construction of vulnerability when we look at resilience more than the natural. I know in Kenya, for example, we've got the National Drought Management Authority or Council, as it were, which basically looks at drought, and they are looking at the physical aspects of drought. But how does drought as a hazard, as a natural hazard, how does it affect people economically? How does it affect people socially? How does it affect people emotionally? Those are some of the aspects that we need to look at as we look at the aspects of hazards, of resilience programming. So the root causes of vulnerabilities, BJ, I like it, you said it already. It is the limited access. That's why we say it's an access issue. It's a social constructed problem. It's the limited access to power, the limited access to economic systems, the limited access to political systems, and also the limited access to resources. These are some of the aspects that we need to look at in terms of if we are programming, we are doing intervention in any society, in any community, we have to look at what are the issues surrounding these systemic issues. Okay, next slide, please. Right, disasters not only caused by natural or human-induced hazards, but also a manifestation of a disequilibrium in social structure, e.g. gender disparities. We talked about the issue of power and how power is shared and how people are able to exercise choices without any hindrance in a community. Also key that social systems organize itself in such a way that it adapts or bounces back to its original state or to even a better state. So look at a community as an agency. Community on its own, if we're talking about a resilient community, we're talking about a community that has access to its resources, that makes decisions around its resources, whether natural or human constructed resources. Also a community that makes its own laws and has control, and all those laws are a bottom-up approach. They are from this particular community, and they're able to learn from their experiences, past disasters, and also organize themselves in order to adapt. So we have to look at communities in such a way. And if such capacities are not there, we have to develop them and make sure that at the end of the day, these communities therefore are in a position to make choices and adapt on their own. Next slide, please. Okay, let us look at the key steps. I'll just make an overview of some of the key steps that you have to undertake in developing a resilience strategy within your organization or in any entity where you are. Let me first put this caveat that resilience strategies are not a one-size-fits-all. Resilience strategies are always context-specific. So in other words, the first step that you have to do is to really understand the context on which your resilience strategy is based, because it has to be informed by the local conditions. It has to be informed by what is happening at the local level where you want your strategy to be. If it's a national strategy, then you have to have a very clear national context. And if it's a county-based strategy, you have to make sure that, yes, I say I have 9 minutes, I'll be able to finish up. The issue number one, you have to do what is called scoping. Scoping, this is the preliminary resilience assessment. where you have the portrait of on the physical, the social, the institutional, and the economic landscape of what should inform your resilience strategy. Then step number 2, you do what is called in-depth context analysis. Following your scoping, then you do your in-depth context analysis. And all these, there are tools that are there that should be able to help you to do this with ease. So focus areas, once you have done your analysis, your scoping, your in-depth analysis, you should be able to see then which ones should be your focus intervention areas. Okay, next slide, please. Right. So when you are doing practically, you have to come up with what I call the levers for change. And levers for change, you have to look at those issues that have the potential to be barriers to resilience or to resilience program intervention in a particular area. This could be, for example, strengthening local communities and build social cohesion, improve education and skills, and promote inclusive economic growth, and as well as improving governance. You can see these are broad, but these are as broad as they are, then already you should be thinking about your focus areas. Which ones should be your priority focus areas in your strategy? If you want to focus on number 1, for example, strengthening local communities and build social cohesion, think around what are the activities that should go under this. Please, next slide. Right, this one I'm going to omit because it's emphasizing on levers as well, but next slide to the focus areas. Let's go to the next slide. Right. Step number 3, then you have to establish your resilience focus areas. For example, you looked at your levers. What are the issues that potentially in this locality, what are the issues that can be barrier to resilience? Then you now have to determine your focus areas. Your focus areas in a resilience strategy, these are your key strategic activities or strategic focus areas. Then you look at issues of social vulnerability, political and governance system, natural resource management institutions, livelihood systems, power structures. All this will be based on your analysis, and you should be then able to come up with activities that therefore address those particular issues that you have found out in your analysis. Next slide, please. Right. Basically, when you are now formulating your resilience strategies, because I'm already thinking in a structured way, you have your resilience strategy already now being crafted. You have to establish your levers. What were your key resilience levers that you established? What were your key areas, focus areas? And then you have to formulate a vision and a mission for your resilience strategy. Formulate your strategic objectives based on your priorities, and then formulate the key activities and allocate resources. I have to emphasize here that any strategy, resilience strategy, that has no resources allocated to it, it is as dead in the water. So it has to make sure that resources are allocated to this strategy, so then it can be implemented. Then formulate a resilience implementation plan within that strategy. Okay, next slide, please. Right, components of a good strategy, I've already said it is, this one will be also, I know the slides will be shared with everybody, so let me not labor very much on this, but basically some of the key components of a good strategy. Let me talk about number 5. I have to see the statement of the problem and in your strategy. What is it that is really the problem, that is a barrier to the resilience, and which you want to address through your resilience strategy and implementation plan? Next, please. Okay, this is all about in the terms of, let me talk about capacity analysis. Number 8, capacity analysis. You have to show exactly at national level and at the local level what exactly is already existing, what exactly is the barrier, what are the capacities, because you're not starting, you're not like reinventing the wheel. You have to start from what is already there. You know, BJ was talking about all the activities, the programs that they were having in counties and so on. That means already something exists. So you build on that. And after that, then you look at your strategic objectives. What are the objectives based on your analysis and priorities? And then what are the expected outcomes? And after that, then you should be able to say, okay, this is what you want to achieve, going down into nitty-gritty of activities that you want to carry out. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, this is all about the implementation, and then on your annex, you need to have what is called the results matrix or the log frame, as well as the implementation strategy. Next slide, please. Yeah, I say that for you to be able to institutionalize resilience within your organization or entity, basically you need, number one, there are several pathways that you have to take. I've seen that people recruit and they advertise to say that they want a resilience officer and so on. This is very good. Number one, you can have what is called recruit and have a resilience manager or coordinator with clear terms of reference that have to do with the resilience activities. And also that person must have the terms of reference that definitely, and performance management within an organization that speak to the resilience thrust of any particular organization or any particular entity, and make sure that there is dedicated budget as well in terms of, you know, how this person or how this unit, because it can be a person, a focal person, or it can be a fully fledged unit where the resilience activities are carried out. And there must be a budget to do this. And in most cases, anything that doesn't have budget or resources allocated to it, it's as good as that. So it is very important that all of us have got this within our organization. It is a policy within an organization that resilience will be part of the programming aspects. Okay, so next slide, please. I think this should be the end. Okay, the takeaway here is that resilience strategies are context specific. Resilience interventions create stronger, safer, and more connected communities. It is about coherence, it is about shared resources, it is about shared values, it is about shared culture, it is about the communities at the center of the strategy. The disaster causation, we have already said, is socially constructed if we use a resilience lens. And the root causes of vulnerability are systemic in nature. And the community should be viewed as an agency and as a center for strategy formulation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kuber, for that presentation. I want to say again thank you and give BJ an opportunity to finish his the presentation that he shared. We have seen several questions on the chat box, and then we'll get to an opportunity where we the presenters get to respond to those questions. Keep writing, keep sharing your questions on the chat box, and we'll get to them as we get an opportunity to interact with both Dr. Kuber and BJ. So BJ, I think you were here linking localization to COVID-19. Can probably take about 3 minutes just to conclude, and we'll go now into question and answer.
Yeah, just a second, please. So let's say, if you can go to the next slide, please. Thanks, Telimo. And I must say it is a real privilege to listen to Payas as well. Just actually, what I was telling, that COVID-19 is a classic case where the risk is global, the pandemic is global, but the risk itself, the way it manifested, is local. So let's say we had to bring ourselves together at the local level to respond. But when we are responding, then we are actually thinking of or are informed by what happened in the various countries all over the world. So we learned from each other in the countries, but we responded locally and led by the local initiatives. Next, please. So, end of the day, like, so what I am actually talking of, in simple terms, whose resilience we are talking of? The resilience of the communities who are most at risk, who are exposed to the various vulnerabilities. Now, that the way Payas so ably analyzed the vulnerability and the disaster. Now, if you want to change, then it has to be changed by them, not by us only. It has to be their plan. It has to be their perspective. It has to be their initiatives. Now, their initiatives, their perspectives, their plans has to be informed by what we are actually learning as a global citizen, as a group of global citizens across the globe. So, because globe, in the end of the day, world has become a village. So, let's say, is there a mechanism of doing perhaps what the Dr. Payas has so clearly articulated? The only thing that I would actually like to add to conclude, can we actually make it the plan of those people who
Yes.
who can who are actually experiencing the current risk, who are experiencing the disaster? Can we make it their plan, and that plan which is informed by what we are actually experiencing in other countries in Africa or in Asia, in Latin America, if that can be brought in by the global actors, and that is shared with the local actors, and local actors facilitate a process where there is an integrated plan which is actually coming out of the discussion or by the analysis of the communities most at risk, and then those plans which are drafted by the communities are integrated with the counties. But before it is integrated with the counties, that time at the local level, when the plan is coming, then it is actually informing the SDG plans, informing the Ministry of Health plan, Ministry of Education plan. So that resilience then becomes an integral part of what community is analyzing and asking for. And that resilience, which is so ably defined by in a very simple terms, is the ability to bounce back and bounce forward after the shocks, where the ability to prevent a hazard becoming a disaster. So that is what is critical. And at the county level, then it is communicated among the very it is primarily communicated between the various departments, and at the global level then we actually communicate uh, among the various global frameworks. So all these things then are integrated downward as well. So it is an iterative process which links local, national and international experiences, and is informing the decision of the communities most at risk to take a decision, make a plan, and those plans are then resourced exactly the way Dr. Payas actually talked about. And I also elaborated on the institutionalization mechanism, so that actually the plans can be resourced and that can be actually implemented, making resilience a possibility.
Yes.
Stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, BJ. This is great.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's great to see how the community must be at the center if we are to
Yes.
develop a resilient strategy, and that goes with what we believe that for us to have resilience, we must endeavor to build a resilient community and entity. So I will go straight to the questions. And one of the things I want to share is this as the question of our day to you. And I will get now into the questions that you have asked. And we want to hear from you, even as both Dr. Nkube and BJ respond to your questions now. From what they have shared, what is the immediate step you will take towards making resilient part and parcel of your work? What is the one thing, actually, what is the first thing you will do? If you read the question of the day, is what is the immediate step, not what are the immediate steps, just what is the one thing that you, where you are, your organization where you are, you will do, you can start doing immediately to make resilient part and parcel of your work. So as you keep writing the questions on the chat box, we'll be also very interested to hear from you an answer to this question of the day. And as you respond to that, I want to start sharing the questions. I have 3 questions for you, BJ, and 3 for Dr. Payas. I
Yes.
probably will ask the first 3 to you, BJ, and you can answer all, or I can ask one by one. But just with the interest of time, I will probably ask all. And the first question is from Ngolia Kimanzu of Salvation Army. He is currently based in Sweden. And his question is, apart from the social audits, how have you been able to measure the empowerment of these civil society organizations? So that's the first question. The second one is from Zivai from ADRA, that is the Adventist Disaster and Develop and Relief Agency. She's based here in Kenya. And Zivai asks, one of the issues of concern in Kenya is radicalization of youth. In practice, what institutional strategies can be put in place to prevent this? And what role can faith communities play? Probably I'll give you an opportunity to answer those 2 first. They are both very loaded. BJ.
Thanks. I don't think I have answered to everything. I can only submit my perspective. What I think. It's a fantastic question from Salvation Army. It's a brilliant question. So what we have articulated some of the indicators of the strengthening of the local civil society organizations. What can be the indicators in our strategy itself? So perhaps I would actually invite you to see that we have actually defined the indicators, the number of civil society organizations active, the funding coming to them, local governance structure being strengthened. So like we can see some of the indicators which are the impact indicators, then you can see the outcome indicators. We have defined that. Let me not go into the details of this. But at the end of the day, what matters, whether the local civil society organizations are actively pursuing a facilitating role. So that is what actually is most important. There's one more question related to that, if I may link it to what I'm saying, Selimo. One more question which was linked to that. We are a small organization. What can we do for building for the work? But I think that is what is the critical. Our role as the civil society organizations and local organizations, we are stronger because of our knowledge of the local context, because of our relationship with the communities, because of our relationship with those communities which are most at risk. So our role is to facilitate the linkages, the processes of doing analysis, bringing that knowledge, getting that knowledge disseminated, and actually linking. So that means even if we are a small organization, we can very well do that in our own context because we know it the best. So we can create that facilitation process. So that is critical in my understanding. Now coming to the second thing, that's the most critical, radicalization of the youth. That's the most critical challenge that currently we face, not only in Kenya, but as in all over the world. But that is where, in my understanding, faith-based organizations have a role to play. A radicalization is an outcome of the extreme views of religious and faith, and interpretation of religion not necessarily always right. That is where the radicalization of youth happens. That's what is my understanding, coming and working in Africa and working in Asia, where I worked in Afghanistan. I've seen it. I worked in many of the countries in Africa as well. So where you can see radicalization are rooted in the religious interpretation, which can be challenged, which has a different perspective in different contexts. Now, if you want to confront this, then the faith-based organization are the best solutions ahead. So whenever we used to actually work in Kenya during the divisive time, particularly during election time, which is the famous time in Kenya when the society is divided and there are fights and the confrontation and the conflict always during the election time. So that is the time that we actually work with the multi-faith groupings, and it does help. If you want to communicate and respond to a radicalization and address the conflict, that's the best time that you can actually involve the faith-based organizations coming together and trying to actually infuse a sense of rationality, a sense of empathy, compassion, and solidarity that is primarily promoted by all religions. So that is what needs to be pushed through a multi-faith based initiative. So that is where the radicalization perhaps can be actually assisted. And in some places, I've seen that working. But perhaps you people have more experience in handling the radicalization of youth, and perhaps I would be happy to hear what Dr. Payas has to say as well.
Yeah, may I add something there? Yeah, especially on the radicalization of the youth. I think, BJ, you have said it, and thank you very much on that. But also, one other thing that we also need to look at is that what are the factors, what are the push and pull factors for radicalization or getting the youth radicalized? In most cases, it is because they are not preoccupied, or because they need some sort of what do I call it? Some sort of livelihood, in terms of, when they are engaged in that, they'll be able to sort of lead a better life or something like that. So I think one of the aspects that we need to do is to make sure that we build capacity of youth in a number of dimensions based on their skills. Whatever skills they can develop, we support them in that. And whatever career they want to pursue, we are able to support them that as well, in terms also, as well as building their capacity in terms of entrepreneurship capacity, and making sure that economically they are independent, so that whatever they are making, the choices they are making in life, it is not because there is a need or there's a gap in whatever they need, but because it's a choice, it's something that they really would want to pursue. So I'll talk about more interventions or activities or programs that are specifically focused on young people and the youth, and especially the girl child as well as the boys. So we need to focus on such things. Thanks.
Okay.
I wanted to add that.
Thank you to both of you. Question, I'll probably now go to Dr. Payas, and I'll come back to BJ. So first, just a comment or a quick question. Golia is asking if it's possible for you to share the link to the African Union Resilience document. And then a question from Alex Moura of Food for the Hungry here in Kenya, asking what strategies or approaches have been proven effective in ensuring community level plans are entrenched in county and district budgets. So what strategies have proven effective in ensuring the community plans are entrenched in county district budgets?
Yes, what is the third one? Because can you ask if there is a third?
Yes, there is. And the question is from Zivai of ADRA, based here in Kenya, the regional office. And she asked, in some circles, there's still a debate as to whether resilience should be part of emergency programs or development programs. What are your thoughts?
Okay. Thank you very much. I think I'll start off like BJ said, that I don't have answer to everything. And BJ, you'll be able to come in, especially on community plans being entrenched at county level. I expect BJ to come in there because he has already worked on this, and especially in Kenya in particular. But for the link, Shalimo, I'll be able to share with you the actual documents that I've mentioned, and then you can share with the participants, but also those documents already have got a link. Is that okay?
Okay.
Yeah, I'll share with you on that on email. Okay, the second question is about community level plans being entrenched in the county and district level plans. and making sure that they attract budget. The next thing is that the first step is that I believe that the planning process is a participatory process. That's the point number one that I would make. That whoever is planning, whether at county level or district level, the authorities are able to come to community levels. And communities, I expect that they are also organized in a certain way. So the whole idea why community plans should be entrenched in county and district plans is that community relevant structures must be consulted and participate, not participate by passive participation, but active participation in terms of making sure that they make decisions in the project cycle or in the planning cycle in terms of what should be done and what should not be done. So in a nutshell, I would want to see a decentralized system where communities participate at various levels using different committees that are there at grassroots level. So the next question is from Adra, from my friend Zivai, about whether this is resilience should be part of emergency or should be part of development. I would say that resilience should be there right across right from the preparedness, response, recovery, as well as development. So it should the outcomes or the indicators for resilience should be inculcated in all those areas. We have already said that resilience is not about the physical only. It is about the economic, it is about the social, it is about also the developmental. So in other words, resilience indicators or resilience outcomes should be seen across emergency, across development, across recovery and response phases. So it cuts across. So I would also let BJ to comment, especially on the other aspects that they are asking.
I think BJ, your mic is muted.
I'm so sorry, getting old these days. So sorry, getting old these days. I just wanted to give thanks to Dr. Payas for actually saying this. And I repeat what both of us were saying. We might not have answered for everything, but let me actually touch upon one thing that was asked by our colleagues. Is an interesting food for FFH. The colleague from there who asked this question, that how is there an example? I will actually encourage you to look at the experience from the Khilipi Citizens Forum. Khilipi Citizens Forum. Now, as Dr. Payas was talking of, it all starts with how can you actually bring the communities' plans together? How can you bring communities first together and then mobilize to do the analysis, prioritize what the problems are, prioritize what the solutions are by them, but not by us. Prioritize what the solution that they're seeking, make a plan for each of that. So when you are prioritizing, when you are analyzing, that time ensure that you are bringing the experience, you as the civil society organization, bringing the experience, information, knowledge, policy information from the national level to that analysis. So if you are analyzing at the local level, people should actually know what they are talking of, which policies they are talking of, what type of policies are guaranteed for them, or what type of schemes are available for them. So that is first done as a dissemination campaign of knowing what is available to them, what is the rights, what is the constitution saying, how the 47 counties have the right to determine what type of plans need to be put in place, and then actually go to the communities, help them to analyze, understand what the risk they are talking of, try to put it together, help them to prioritize what the solution they want to make, then make a plan. That they make a plan. So those plans that then are actually submitted to the county level planning process. And in Kenya, it is mandatory that the county level plans have to have the participation of the communities, for example. So let's say what Khilipi Citizens Forum did, they actually encouraged the local communities to really do the planning process. They brought those plans. So, for example, there was a place where the school building was requiring a repair, and perhaps water bodies need to be repaired, or perhaps the education program need to actually take resilience into their thinking and perspectives. All those plans then were integrated into the national, the county level planning, and then
Yes.
budget was actually allocated. Now,
Yes.
what is actually critical, that this is not it is an ongoing process. If you have given a plan of say 1 billion shillings, this is not going to be integrated in one day. So you have to continue hammering your plans, and you continue creating a forum, where continue to engaging in a forum where the government and you sit down, you as the civil society representative, you as the representative of the communities most at risk, whose plans are there. Then you actually sit down and discuss and continue to negotiate. And what the Kilipi County Citizens Forum did, they also looked at what was actually budgeted and how much was actually used. They reviewed it, and they worked with the government to say that this is something you planned and you didn't actually take that into account. You didn't actually deliver it. So that is an ongoing process of engagement, where the community representative, the civil society representative sat down with the county planning processes and the county officials to discuss, to review, to further plan, and actually ensure that those plans are integrated. So that
Sure.
is what I'll just actually give this as an example, and I will actually encourage the country director of FFH who is attending this to actually connect with the Kilipi Citizens Forum to see if they can be of any help. That is one example, but there are many counties. In even Kajiado, they started the Citizens Forum. There are many counties where they started the Citizens Forum to make the county accountable to what the plans are and how to actually integrate the plans. What are the other questions that you wanted me to respond to?
So yeah, so there's two related questions for you, BJ. And the first one is from Jessica Musila of LDRI. I'm not conversant with the acronym yet, but she asked, is it best practice to position resilience as part of the executive director or operations director profile? So just where is it best? Where does it best work? And the second question is from Tommy of Nigeria, FLEP Nigeria, and she asks, what's an effective suggestion or advice in incorporating resilience in an organization with a small manpower capacity, a very lean team, and still growing to broaden its partnership? So, what is your advice in how they can incorporate resilience, especially now that a lot of the CSOs that are part of GNDR are also lean organizations?
Yeah. So it's a very critical question. So it's a very nice question as well. That in the organizations is interesting to see how the organization is structured. I would actually say that if you, I don't know what you are working on, Jessica. If you are working on education, if you are working on health, sometimes we divide the organization into sector with the sectoral teams. We divide the organization sometimes with the objectives teams. With sometimes we divide them into operations and support. So let's say, so there are various ways that we divide. But in my understanding, resilience is an integral part of anything and everything that happens or is promoted by the organization. Is an
Yes.
integral part. Let's say,
Yes.
if you're talking of risk-informed development as an integral part of resilience, then it has to be an integral part of each and every job descriptions. If you are talking of education, then resilience is an integral part. If you are talking of health, resilience is an integral part. If you are talking of community mobilization, resilience becomes an integral part. So it will be always useful to make it as an integral part of each and every job. And I would also go to a next step, where if you are talking of organizational systems, that also need to be resilient. If you are talking of HR, need to talk of resilience. If you are talking of IT, that need to also talk of resilience in their own perspective. So resilience is an integral part of anything and everything that organization does. Now, having said this, it has to be integrated first, but you have to still create another expertise area who can actually support the resilience expertise in the team. So you can create a central resilience expertise. It can be depending on the type of organization that you are. Let's say it can be a bigger team or a smaller team who can be there to really provide that professional or technical support to the various team leaders who are leading on education or leading on health, leading on community mobilization or leading on livelihood, so that they can actually take it further how to do this. But there can be a support which is actually made available to them. So that is how I will actually think of. Now, coming to the smaller organizations, we are a network of mostly a smaller set of organizations. I strongly believe that we have a critical role to play as small organizations. Because we are small, we are agile, we are very good, and we are quite close to the context that we live in. We are close to the communities. We are part of the community itself most of the time. So if we are part of the community, then this is better, so that actually we can ensure that resilience becomes a part of the narrative, part of our dialogue, part of our conversation with the communities. If you are an organization which is not the community itself, then we can actually facilitate a process. When you facilitate, you don't need extra manpower or woman power. When you facilitate, one person can actually facilitate and build a collective facilitator group from among the community members, build a collective group from among the local government institutions. So let's say you can actually facilitate and convene a conversation that involve a larger chunk of the constituency, and then actually take it forward. Let me stop here.
Okay, thank you very much, BJ. I would like to request that you both give some closing remarks at this time. And as you do that, I'll also just to explore a final question that has been asked again by Zivai of ADRA. And this is a very good question. He says, has there been a significant shift of donors in terms of allocating resources for resilience? And goes ahead to say, what does it seem as if there is need and understanding of resilience is not being adequately matched by resource allocation, whether by donors or government? So it's a buzzword, but we are not seeing a matched resource allocation yet for resilience. So as you give your final thoughts, probably 2 minutes each because our time is up, also to reflect on these questions. We can start with you, BJ, and then
you can start with. Can you start with Dr. Payas this time?
Sure.
Yeah, BJ, you're throwing it to me.
I was having an order, but now we'll start with Dr. Kuber.
No, that's okay. I think first of all, thank you very much. This has been a very good opportunity. I wish we could continue with this kind of discussions. And of course, as you say, Chelimo, I think this is just the beginning of the conversation. This is a very technical and relatively new field, and I know most of the people would understand it better if they really get their hands dirty, practically do some of these things, and also realize that it can be done. Communities can be resilient. Yes, donors have become so operational these days, and they understand very much, like BJ has said very well, that resilience lens has to be there. You have to put in a resilience lens on each and everything that you are doing, whether it's a WASH program, food security, nutrition, or protection, or gender, and so on. You have to be putting on a resilience lens. And once you do that, then you'll be able to give in some of the indicators for resilience that are there. And donors will be interested to see something like that. But also you can have a standalone project that addresses the issues of social construction in a community and have that as a fully fledged proposal for resilience programming, and it will attract very good resources from donors. And I think as we look at this, I think we, through BJ's network, and of course through this resource that we already see here, we should be able to support, continue supporting one another going forward. Thank you, Chelimo.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nkube. Final remarks from you, BJ.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Dr. Payas. It was a privilege listening to you. Let's stay in touch beyond this webinar as well. And Shelimo, we are already in touch. And I would actually request anybody and everybody who want to be in touch and write to us, please do so. And if you can have my email ID from Shelimo, my colleague is also attending here. And I'll be very happy to be in touch with you. Now, coming to the question, in my understanding, resilience is an integral part, as Dr. Payas has already said, of anything and everything. A separate allocation is not what
Yeah, I had actually developed something around government. Just from
so, like say, I will actually say that actually resilience should be in an integral part of anything and everything that we do. So I would not actually ask for a separate budget. Rather, I would actually say that resilience as an approach is accepted in anything and everything that we are doing. Anything and everything that we are doing. So that should be integrated to anything and everything that we are doing. Without that resilience, it doesn't make any sense. If you are talking of poor people, if you are talking of people who are at risk, it doesn't make any sense. Any change, any development initiative, they don't make any sense unless we are talking of resilience of those people, very people. Now, if you talk of the climate debate and the money, that is quite a bit. Money is already available in the climate debate and implementation of climate change adaptation work, building resilience. So there's quite a bit of resilience building is happening under the climate change. Quite a bit of resilience work happening under DRR communities. But in my understanding, end of the day, I would actually encourage everybody to think of resilience of the communities most at risk in whatever plans that they're making. That's what I will actually submit. End of the day, it is the community's life if we are all together to change and make this world free from disaster, free from, then we have to make it free from injustice, we have to make it free from inequality, we have to make it free from the pandemic. And the only way that we can do this by building together the resilience of the communities who are most at risk. By building the resilience of the communities most at risk, we can transform not only their life, but we can transform the world that we live in.
Sure.
And that will be a better world to live in. So with these words, I will actually submit my conclusion. Let's work together. Let's build resilience together. And it is possible to change the world that we live in. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, BJ. Very powerful closing remarks too. Mine is just to give a summary of the 3 C's that I picked from here, and there are many. Is that for us to institutionalize resilience, it must be context specific, community centered, and we must champion the localization agenda to achieve the first 2. And that way, if we have localization at the back of our mind, then we are able to have both effective and efficient strategies to enhancing or building resilient communities. So thank you very much for spending time with us. We have had over 65 people between the Facebook Live and this on Click Meeting, and this the turnout is overwhelming. We'll keep interacting with you. If you have any further questions, feel free to reach out to us at Kenya for Resilience or to Children's Mission Africa. My colleague will put our details on the chat box. Children's Mission Africa is the Secretariat for the Community of Practice, the Kenya for Resilience Community of Practice. And from us, we want to thank both Dr. Payas Kuber and BJ Kumar for just sharing your experience and your skills and your knowledge with us in the conversation of institutionalizing resilience. I also want to thank the people who have supported in organizing this webinar. We have a small core team within the Kenya for Resilience Community of Practice that comprises of Caroline Maua of Lutheran World Relief and Faith Mawia of Economics Project Transformation Facility. Both organizations are members of Kenya for Resilience. And thank you for both organizing and introducing us to for Caroline introducing us to Dr. Payas Kuber. Thank you also, Marilyn, for introducing us to BJ to share with us, because GNDR has been part of the Kenya for Resilience Community of Practice since the beginning, and the partnership is very good, just to see how much more we can do. Also to Joy Talemwa and Julia Mwiti of Children's Vision Africa, thank you for being part of planning this. So thank you very much, everyone, and we hope to continue partnering, and we look forward to seeing how you and your organization is institutionalizing and making resilience part and parcel of everything that you do. With a resilience lens, we want to leave you and ask that may God bless you and keep you. Thank you very much. Take care and keep safe from COVID-19. Goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
I like your 3 C's anyway. Thank you very much, Chelimo. Thank you. Keep well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. It was great, Chelimo.
Great, PJ. PJ, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Good meeting you. Let's talk on the other
stay in
side.
touch. Thanks a lot, Chelimo. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much,
Dr. Payas.
PJ, for honoring us with your time.
Umetoka?
Okay, bye-bye.
Umetoka Olkalao?
Leave.